Hey everyone, Fraken here. I'm here to show off how I play Median XL with a Steam controller. I've been using a Steam controller for pretty much since they launched. First, just for fun, and now, of course, just for fun because I'm using it for playing games. But at the same time, since it came out, I've become disabled and I can't sit at a desk anymore. And so I've had to adapt if I want to keep playing the games I used to play on PC. One of the hardest genres to play with a controller is stuff like Diablo or Path of Exile because of the fact that there's no built-in controller-based movement. There's no WASD. There's nothing to bind to a joystick to move yourself around easily, like the console versions of Diablo 3. So what you have to do instead, at least what I do, I know there's other things people have done, but in my case, I simulate having a mouse. And so I've gotten really good over the years using the right touchpad as a mouse. And so that's how I do my controlling. I move around with it as normal. I use the left and right triggers as left and right mouse button. I know by default it binds right to left trigger and left mouse to right trigger. And I think that's to handle how most games do firing of guns. So, right click lets you zoom or look down the sights, and left click fires. I personally prefer left being left mouse and right being right mouse because in my brain that's how it works. And so I always change it for any sort of default setup to that. So it doesn't really matter which these two are, it's just whatever's comfortable for you. So that gives you basic controls. You now can move, you can use your abilities on left and right click, but because of the fact you're not using a keyboard, everything becomes different. You need hotkeys for everything. Similar to how you do it on a keyboard, but you don't have it in front of you, so you have to figure out where to bind things. And what I found works the best is to use the WAXABY buttons for controlling stuff like your inventory, your hirelings, your character sheet, your skills, all your basic stats. That's where I tend to bind the keys for it. And this applies to more than just Diablo 2. For Median XL specifically, this is how I've got it set up. So A opens your inventory, B opens your mercenaries gear. I need to rename that so it's not hireling. X opens up your character sheet, and Y opens skills. So it's easy to get to all of that without having to go down and click at something at the bottom. I've carried over something from Path of Exile where I bound all my potions, all my flasks in Path of Exile to the joystick. Because it's really easy to just spin the joystick and hit all your flasks. And you can click it in for the fifth one. For Median, it's a little different because you have just 4 potion slots and you don't necessarily want to drink a whole bunch at once. So this isn't the best setup necessarily. It is pretty easy to accidentally drink 2 potions. I bet if I were to tweak some of the settings a little bit, it might be a bit easier to avoid that. Maybe increasing the dead zone or making it less likely that it hits 2 directions at once. And then over to skills, this is where the real stuff starts happening. This is where the functionality becomes useful. And so I use the D-pad usually for extra skill bindings in Path of Exile, and I carried that over to Median. And so I was like, oh, I'll put F1 through F4 on the D-pad. And that's a good start, but you use more than 4 skills a lot of the time in Median XL. You don't have just a couple skills bound. You usually have at least 8, especially once you add in Town Portal and Jitan's Gate and all of that. And so these bindings here, all the skill names here are from my Blood Magic Amazon that I play. And so I've renamed everything to be appropriate for them. So, this easily is just really F1, F2, F3, and F4 bound to the left D-pad. But they're named where I personally have put the skills for a Blood Magic Amazon. And so what I do is I made it so when I hold down the left bumper, it switches these keys to having new functionality. And so now, as long as I'm holding the left bumper down, now I have F5, F6, F7, and F8. And as you can see, I've got them for Bloodlust, Town Portal, Jitan's Gate, and Fire Elementals. Now, something I do with this, because of the fact that I'm using a Steam controller and it's so customizable, and I know exactly what skills are going to each button, I've made it so that it makes it easier for me to do certain things. For example, for Bloodlust, I have it switch to press F5, switch to Bloodlust, and then clicks the left mouse button and activates it. And then it switches back to move only, which is what I have set to left mouse button by default when I'm playing as my Blood Magic Amazon. So it's a way to rapidly fire off the ability without having to mess with a whole bunch of buttons to get it available again. Because it's a pain to switch to Bloodlust, activate, and switch back when you have to hold down modifier keys and everything. When you have F1 through F12, it's a lot easier. It's just a row of things. You hit a button, you're back. But when you're using a Steam controller, once you're beyond 4 hotkeys, it's a little harder. And so some of these things made it easier. For example, with Town Portal there, when I activate Town Portal, it places the Town Portal and goes back to F1 for me. I have it set to default to go back to F1 for Magic Missiles. Or it could be whatever your main skill is bound to F1. For my Blood Magic Amazon, it's Magic Missiles. Same with Jatan's Gate. It switches to it, it activates it, and switches back. And so that makes it easier to fire those off in a way similar to how having multiple hotkeys would actually be. As if you were having, more buttons available for activating skills. It's not 100% perfect, of course. Like for example, if something's on cooldown and you try to do it, things get a little weird. It's not exactly the greatest. Like if I try to activate Jatan's Gate and it's still on cooldown, my character will start walking in the direction where I'm pointing, and that's exactly the opposite of what I want them to do in that case. Because usually I'm trying to warp out of danger or warp over a wall or something. I don't want them walking forward. And so I also use the left bumper to activate a couple other things. Like I have the map reveal bound to, I guess, back. I refer to it as select usually, but to back. And then I have Champions of the Sun from a rune word in one of my shields bound to right bumper while holding that down because I need that extra 9th skill slot. Back to the default control scheme, we are not holding extra buttons down. I've got the grip buttons doing weapon swap with the left grip button and sprint with the right grip button. And so you can easily do both of those without having to go and click on anything strange or hold any other weird buttons. It's easy to do because you use your middle fingers for it. It's separate from everything else. And then I use the back button for map. I use start for opening up the menu. And then the left bumper is shift in addition to doing the action layer stuff. And then it also, let's see, what else am I having it do? Is that it? Yeah, that's it. It does the action layer stuff and the hold in place. I don't think I have anything else it's doing. I'm not doing any mode shifting. And then the right bumper is for toggling showing items. So either you can hold it down, or if you're using D2 stats, you can switch it to toggle items by pressing home on your keyboard. I need to bind a key for it on here. I haven't yet. I haven't figured out a good spot for it. It's not a command I'm going to want to send off, and I send it once per session. So it's not a one I really worry about binding to the controller, but for full controller support, that would be useful. And then I also have it set that if you double tap it, it will inject or eject your drop filter from D2 stats. And then finally, I have the right touchpad. When you click it down, it also holds down control. And so in my case, I've bound control to be my Horadric Cube activation button. And so I can both move things in and out of inventory and use the cube at the same time with that. In general, it's very helpful. There's a couple cases where it might be better to bind something different for that. For example, if you're trying to do a whole bunch of stuff involving shrines, it can be kind of a pain because you can't control click the shrines out because you're putting them back in and out of their storage item. I forget the specific name. Vessels? I think it's vessels. You're constantly popping them in and out of the vessel unless you time it right. Because if you hold it down, it doesn't rapidly press it. It just holds it. You can pop a shrine out and then click it and then press and let go and press it again. It takes a little getting used to. In general, it's been very helpful though. So that's my controller setup for playing Media in Excel. It's worked great for me. I've made it to level 126 on that Blood Magic Amazon. I've got a level 120 Bow Druid as well, and a level 111 Summon Barbarian that I've been working on lately. I hope this video is helpful for anyone. I'm going to provide a link to the controller profile or configuration profile in my description for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments or come check out my stream. Hope this helps out.